Welcome back to another Spirit Island video. In this video, we'll be doing an adversary guide of Russia 1 to 6, where we talk about each individual level of Russia, talk about some strategies, and how to approach the adversary. So, with that said, let's get started. So we got Russia 6 here. It is currently the most difficult adversary at difficulty 11. The only other adversary that reaches difficulty 11 would be England 6, and I do have an England 6 guide. If you're interested in that content, give that guide a look. Looking at Russia, it adds an additional loss condition, and it says hunters swarm the island. It says put destroyed beasts by the adversary on this panel whenever there are more dead beasts on this panel than there are on the island. The invaders win, and that will come into play with this Russia level 1 rule. The escalation is going to cause extra explorers to get placed in lands with beasts. Now it says if you can't instead add two beasts or add two explorers among lands with beasts on a different board. So very interesting. If you are playing, let's say on board B, and someone takes both of your beasts, well now basically the rest of the island has to take your escalations. So something to point out if you're playing with those beast users. Looking at the first level, it says hunters seek, shell, and hide. It says during setup on each board, you add an extra beast and explorer to the highest number of land without buildings. During play, explorers do an extra damage. Whenever ravage actions add blight to the land, destroy a beast in that land. So this is how the invaders kill beasts. This is via this level 1 rule. So once again, whenever invaders ravage and blight a land with beasts, it kills the beasts and that gets put onto the card. But most importantly, this level 1 says that explorers do +1 damage. That means a single explorer is going to do 2 damage. And that's huge because now that 2 damage is enough to blight the land. Looking at the next level, it says a sense of impending disaster. The first time each action would destroy an explorer. If possible, one of those explorers is instead pushed. You then gain an additional fear. What this means is it creates explorers. It allows one explorer to be invulnerable per action. So, and this is where a lot of the rules confusion gets tied to. So hopefully I can explain this best. For instance, if I have a land here on B5 with an explorer and a town, and let's say I do 3 damage in this land, killing the town and the explorer, I would do the 3 damage. I would kill the town. I would then do the extra point of damage to the explorer. So 2 damage to the town, 1 damage to the explorer. Because of the Russia level 2 rule, I instead gain a fear and I get to push this explorer. And this is where a lot of, like I said, that complexity, but also strategy for Russia is, and it's all built into this level 2 rule and also the level 3. But basically, I then push this explorer. So where I push this explorer is going to be critical because of the Russia 3 rule. And we'll talk about that in a second. Now, let's say you instead have 3 explorers in that land and a town. And let's say you do 3 damage. Well, you can do 3 damage to the explorers. You would then kill 2. And like I said, one explorer will always live and will get pushed and you'll get a fear. Now, here's an interesting question. What happens if the land is isolated? So if you do 3 damage here, you'll kill 2 explorers like usual. You'll do that third point of damage to this final explorer. Normally, it would be pushed. Now, it's isolated, so you cannot push it. As a result, it will just die, and you will not get the fear. So it's this very interesting dynamic where you can use isolates to kind of pin off and kill remaining explorers. Important to point out that this only deals with destruction of explorers. If you have cards that remove explorers, you get around this level 2 rule. Also, this level 2 rule will trigger once per action. So if you have an action that will kill multiple explorers, a good example would be Vigor of the Breaking Dawn. You only push 1 explorer. So let's execute. Let's say this is thresholded. And let's say it looks like this. Okay. So it says Vigor of the Breaking Dawn. It says 2 damage per Dahan. So we'd do 4 damage in our land B8. Let's say we kill the explorer. We would get the fear. We would kill a town, do damage, and we'd push this explorer. Let's say we push it to this wetland. We then, let's say it's thresholded. We may push up to 2 Dahan. If we push Dahan here and Dahan here, we then would get to do 4 damage here and 2 damage here. We could instead do all of the damage to explorers, and since we've already pushed one explorer from my B8, I don't have to push any of the explorers here on my B7 and my B6. I'm resetting the board here. Now, here's another question. What happens if I push this explorer into one of the lands where I'm also doing damage? Well, you can never kill the same explorer twice. So this explorer, even if you have extra damage, would not be killed. Let me rephrase. If you have a land that looks like this, and you use a thresholded vigor there, you do 4 damage here, you'd kill the town, you'd kill an explorer, the final explorer would get pushed, we'd push it here, and then if we push the Tutan via the threshold, you do 4 more damage here, killing the town. Yes, we have 2 damage left over, but we cannot kill this explorer here on B6 because it's already been killed on B8. Oh no, I lost my yellow check mark. Let's Control Z that. There we go. Just completely reset. Okay. And hopefully that made sense for everybody. Russia 2 is extremely confusing. Now, Russia 3 is where this adversary gets very interesting. And it says, competition among hunters. Ravage cards also match lands with 3 or more explorers. So, if you have a land with 3 explorers, and there's a card in the Ravage spot, this land will be ravaging, even if it doesn't match that card. So let's say that first, let's say it looks like this, right? You have sands ravaging, mountain building. Well, any land on the entire board that has 3 explorers will also ravage. So keep that in mind. And that's what makes this Russia 2 rule so interesting, is because where you push explorers is going to be critical, because now you're trying to, let's say I'm doing damage here on my B5, I push explorer to, let's say my board looks like this, and I do damage here on B5. If I push it to B7, oh wait, now this land will ravage. Now if I push it to the B4, well now if this land up here, if this next card is jungle, well now it's going to explore, having 3 explorers, and now this land will ravage. So there's a lot of micro decisions that Russia kind of forces the player to make while they're playing to minimize and maximize extra ravages, or maybe you want to create that extra ravage or not. And that's what's pretty interesting about Russia and why it's one of my favorite adversaries. Russia 4 is going to create a new invader deck. You're going to have your 3 stage 1s, and then you're going to have alternating 2s and 3s, and then you'll end with 2 3s. No matter what, this deck is going to have your 4 stage 2s, and it's going to have your 5 stage 3s. So just like England, just like France, it's an entire, you'll be playing the full game of Spirit Island. It's just the 2s and 3s are mixed up together, and that is just, it's very interesting. I love that dynamic of this adversary. Russia 5, it says entrench in the face of fear, and it says put an unused stage 2 and an unused stage 3 under the top 7 and 3 fear cards. So that's what's shown here. So we have a stage 2 under the 3rd fear card, and you have a stage 3 under the 7th fear card. Once the players accumulate enough fear, this invader card will pop down and will end up right in this build spot. As a result, you'll be having 2 different build actions. You'll have the card that's building there. Let's say it looks like this. And you'll also have an extra card that would be building via the this Russia, I call them Russia bombs, but this extra Russia trap card. And it's important to point out that it's under the first 3 fear cards, the first one, and that's going to require 12 fear, and the second one is under the 7 fear cards, and that will be it will require 28 fear, and that will be a stage 3. The reason why this is important is you kind of want to time out your fear. You really have to create a strategy. Do you either want to rush the fear deck and get an early stage 2 win, or do you want to kind of manage how the fear comes out such that you can time that Russia trap card correctly? And that's another element that makes Russia very challenging, is kind of how you can time that Russia trap card. Now, there's a really important rule that people always forget. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to gain some fear cards. Actually, I'll do this so that will pop right down here. There we go. And the trap card is revealed. And there are two rules that people always forget with the trap cards. The first one is the stage 2 here. The turn, so after the mountain builds, so before you resolve the wetland build, because that's immediately when this wetland card is revealed, you then have to Russia escalate. Okay? People always forget that. You have to escalate for this trap card. Now, if it's coast, you don't have to escalate for it, but if it's any of the other land types, you do. So how this would work is sands would ravage, mountain would build, I then would have to escalate. Let's say I escalate into my B5. Remember adding 2 explorers via the escalation. I then would build wetlands. And that's how this would play out. The next thing that people always miss, let's say explore wetlands again. So people always miss this here. And that's, you now have 2 ravages. But lands with 3 explorers will match each ravage card. And it says here in parentheses, if a land already matched the ravage card, it only ravages once. Now this trips up players. They think that if the card ravages once for the mountain, it won't ravage again for the wetland. So what do I mean by that? So if I have a land with 3 explorers, let's say I have 3 explorers here in my B5. Because of Russia 3 explorers, it's going to ravage and it's going to match that mountain card. Well, that a lot of players they think, okay, well, it ravaged once, so it doesn't have to ravage again this turn. Well, no, it only matched the 1 ravage card. So once again, it has 3 explorers, which means it's going to match the 2nd ravage card. So it'll actually ravage a 2nd time on these bomb turns. Okay, and so that's the second most missed rule. If I didn't explain this correctly, just post it in the comments, and hopefully I can write up a better explanation. And finally, we have Russia 6, and this is the most challenging rule of Russia, and it makes Russia very, very challenging. It says pressure for fast profit after the ravage step, after the second, or after that first, so it says after the ravage step of turn 2. So basically after there is a ravage card that occurred. On each board where it added no blight in the ravage, in the land with the most explorers, add an explorer and a town. Once again, this is pressuring. It's going to try to add explorers to the land with the most explorers. So it's going to pressure that Russia 3 rule. So if my board looks like this, and let's say I take no blight this turn, let's say it's building wetlands. If I Russia 6 into this B1, it'll add an explorer town, and then it's also building wetlands. And you'll see lands can build up really quickly. And this is where that Russia 2 rule, where you're moving explorers, is so important, because you have to kind of plan around, okay, am I going to Russia 6? And if I Russia 6, which land am I going to Russia 6 in? And this is why a lot of spirits, they'll try to take blight in those early turns, just so that you can prevent the Russia 6 rule. You'll get closer to blighting out, but Russia 6 can cause the invaders to have so much tempo, it's better off to just take the blight to scale rather than constantly Russia 6. Okay, I think that is it for talking about the rules. Let's talk about miners right now. So over here I have some really powerful miners into Russia. And the first one is Song of Sanctity. Now, usually this card is pretty bad, but against Russia, it does 2 things. One, it can push all explorers. Now that's critical because Russia is going to have a critical mass of explorers. So this card allows you to push all of them from a single land. So like if I am like jungle here and I have to escalate into that jungle, and maybe I have to escalate again for some reason, I can use Song of Sanctity, pushing them all out. Scour the land. Oh, also the other thing about Song of Sanctity is it also acts as blight removal, which is really important against Russia 6. Scour the land is another really powerful card because it destroys all explorers and it's in that miner deck. So it's a one way for us to basically wipe out an entire land with explorers, and you're going to see me utilize cards like this to kind of deal with Russia. And lastly, Poison Dew, once again, destroy all explorers. Now it does have to target jungle or wetland, so kind of plan around that. Strong defense cards like Nature's Resilience, Call to Guard, these are cards that you're looking for because Han counterattacks are a very efficient way to destroy the invaders. I really like Call to Guard's second line of text here. It says, after invaders are added or moved into target land, 1 damage to each invader. Very strong when you're taking escalations. If you have to take like 3 or 4 escalations, you put Call to Guard there, and boom, they'll all take a damage, and then 1 will get pushed. The next one is Ever Twisting Trail, but basically I have this here to represent any isolate effect. we already talked about how isolates can be used to kill that final explorer so that it doesn't get pushed. In addition, isolates are very important for just creating pockets. You'll notice with Russia that they don't build a lot of buildings outside of Russia 6, so it's very easy, especially in solo, to create pockets. And Russia 6 is a way where they can kind of instantly add buildings, so a lot of times you'll kind of isolate your Russia 6 land such that you won't, like, let's say my Russia 6 land is my B5 here, right? And I'm going to Russia 6 B5. I may isolate this because I know I'm going to pop down a town and that's going to basically create all of these adjacencies on my board. Cycles of Time and Tide, basically this is going to represent any blight removal effect. And we talked about Russia 6 where it's kind of pressuring the player to make the decision. Do they want to blight every turn or do they want to take the Russia 6? And that means blight cards or blight removal cards are very, very powerful here because we can kind of take extra Russia 6s. This is the one matchup where blight removal is very strong. So if you like blight removal cards, this is the adversary to play against. I now have wilds slash beast creation cards. Basically, wilds is very powerful against Russia, just like it is against France, because wilds is going to stop escalation, or not escalations, it's going to stop explorers. And that's really important because killing explorers because of Russia 2 is very challenging. So wilds basically, think of it as it's removing an explorer from popping up on your board. I have both Swarming Wasps as hazards as well, once again creating wilds, but really it's to add more beasts to kind of avoid that beast loss condition that Russia creates. Also, Swarming Wasps has that if the land has beasts, push up to 2 explorers, which is very strong, acting as a fast control card into this adversary. Lastly, we have Call to Trade, which is a Ravage skip, and Veil of the Night's Hunt, which is just each Dahan deals 1 damage to a different invader, basically allowing you to kill several explorers. And like I said, Call to Trade acting as that Ravage skip. So just 2 very strong cards that have a lot of synergy with, not synergy, but a lot of, I guess, counterplay to the adversary. Looking at majors here, so up here I have some very, very strong majors. I'm not going to go through all of them. Storm Swath, just 1 damage to all invaders, basically killing a lot of explorers. Sleep and Never Waken is probably the best major in the game into Russia, and that's because it allows you to remove explorers, and it's also a skip. If you can threshold it, it allows you to remove up to 6 explorers from among your lands. That allows you to basically pick off explorers from several different lands that you have presence, and it allows you to get very, very far ahead. Just a very busted card. Vigor is just amazing. Same with Tiger's Hunting, very fast, lots of damage, creates more beasts. Voice of Command, very similar to Sleep and Never Awaken, very powerful here. It says 1 damage per Dahan and Explorer to buildings. Defend 2, and then during the Ravage action, explorers fight alongside the Dahan. Basically, this card alone, if you have a huge stack of explorers, it essentially acts as a Ravage skip. In addition, those explorers will slaughter all of the buildings in that land. So, very powerful card. Strangling Firevine, destroy all explorers, and add some wilds. Instruments, allowing a ravaging land to ravage into adjacent lands, very strong on these double ravage turns. If you have a land that's matching both cards, like a land with 3 explorers, this card on that land would cause it to ravage twice, just slaughtering everything around it. Flocking, once again, more beast add cards. This does tons of damage to explorers, pushes stuff. This is a new Nature's Incarnate Major, very strong against Russia. Jungle Hungers, destroy all. Irresistible Call, gathering a ton of stuff. Gathering 15 explorers is no joke, and a lot of times can completely solve a board. Like Irresistible Call, let's say here on B4, and just everything gets gathered up. And yes, this land will ravage due to Russia 3, likely, but it solves all of the other builds that could be happening on your board. Pyroclastic Flow. This is a destroy all explorers. Once again, anything that destroys all explorers, very strong. Trees and Stones, Dahan damage with defend. What's not to like? Mists of Oblivion, one of the worst cards in the game, but it does 1 damage to each invader, which allows you to destroy several explorers at once. Down here, I have some cards that tend to be pretty bad against Russia. I'm going to go through them quickly. Blazing Renewal, Rumbling Earthquake, Fire and Flood, Volcanic, and Cast Down. And the reason why these cards are pretty bad is they're either too expensive or they're too slow. Or they don't do enough. So, for instance, Blazing is doing damage to buildings. Same with Rumbling Earthquake. Then you have Fire and Flood, Volcanic, and Cast Down. They're all slow. In addition to, they cost so much. And usually Russia is going to create a lot of several problems around your board, like 2 here, 3 here, 4 here, 2 here. So doing 20 damage in a single land with 2 explorers that's blighting is just not efficient. Cast Down could work if you can threshold it, but most of the time you cannot. Looking down here, I have a couple spirits, and there's so different spirits have different ways that they approach Russia, and that's why I really like Russia. You'll have a different strategy for each spirit. I've chosen these 4 down here because they can create a very unique experience, mainly Starlight, but more importantly, the Water Starlight build, allowing you to remove Blight every turn, which allows you to basically bypass the Russia 6 rule, right? You just let the land ravage, doesn't matter, I'm just going to clean it up, and you can bypass that Russia 6. Green. So green has this ability where it says whenever invaders would ravage or build in a land with sacred sites, you may prevent it by destroying one of your presence. Green creates a strategy. I call it the infinite skip strategy, and there's a lot of spirits that can do it. Many Minds is another one that can. But basically, the whole point of this strategy is you're going to have a land. Let's say it's this jungle, for instance, with green. And you're going to let this land build up. Let's say it looks like this. It's building. It's going to ravage. You then skip it. They then rush a 6. Remember, you're adding Explorer Town to the land with the most explorers. And then let's say it's escalating. So then you escalate in that land. So now look at this land has 5 explorers. It's just impossible to deal with. But you're green and you have an infinite skip. So the idea is you set this land up as your infinite skip land. And every turn, because it has the most explorers, it's going to keep adding your Explorer Town, and I call this your Russia 6 land. And the idea is you dedicate one of your resources constantly to this Russia 6 land, while the rest of your resources deal with the rest of your board, and then eventually you look for one of the big hammers like Poison Dew, Scour the Land, something like that to basically slaughter all of the explorers, and wait, all of the explorers are gone. Now it's not matching the cards, and then you don't have to worry about the land anymore. And that's, by the time you do that, then you're kind of able to take full control of the game. So there's several spirits that have this create a Russia 6 land. Hopefully through my different gameplay videos in the future, I'll be able to kind of show you guys which spirits can do that and how to do that strategy correctly. Many Minds is actually another spirit that can do that Russia 6 strategy. It's a little bit more challenging because you have to kind of reclaim spam your Dreadful Tide, but it's very possible. Now I have Many Minds up here for a different reason, and that's because Many Minds has a lot of beast gathering potential. And Many Minds can create a very interesting game just by it entering into Russia 6 for the whole team. And the reason why is because of this left innate, I can gather, let's say I just gather all of these beasts into this mountain. And then the next turn, I'm going to gather all of the beasts from this board. Well, what's going to end up happening is now my teammates on these other boards, they no longer have to escalate because they have no beasts. But that means we have to take all of the escalations. So now we're taking 2 escalations here because of board B, 2 escalations from board F, and 2 escalations from board C. Now you might be thinking, oh gosh, how is Many Minds going to do that? Well, I just talked about the strategy and how we're going to do that with an infinite skip land. So you already have a land that's an infinite skip land, right? You're constantly skipping it, and then you just take all of the team's escalations into that land. Now, because Many Minds isn't a 1/1/1 spirit, and whenever you reclaim, you're not growing. This is where you need to kind of ask for your team a little bit of help. Maybe ask for like a gift of constancy or some way to reclaim Dreadful Tide, so you can kind of continually grow and continuously skip that land. And once again, this is a strategy that I will be able to showcase in one of my future videos. I plan on doing a Russia 6, several spirits. I'm thinking I'll do 3 spirits with Russia 6 at once, and I'll kind of showcase how Many Minds can utilize this strategy effectively. And it's very challenging to pull off. It's not easy, but in the showcase, I'll kind of show how that plays out. Lastly, I have Lure. Lure has the reputation of being like one of the best spirits in Russia, and that's because of this special rule on the left. It says for each of your presence in a land, you get to ignore up to 2 explorers during the ravage step and any ravage actions. That means if I have a single presence, I ignore 2 explorers. So if I have 3 explorers here in D8, it would be ravaging, but oh wait, I have my special rule, so I'm ignoring 2 for the purpose of that ravage action. So it's as if this land is not ravaging, and this allows the Lure player to very easily manage its lands. Lure does have a very good Russia matchup. I would say it's top 3. I don't think it's the best. I'm pretty sure Keeper like is the best, and I'll showcase maybe some games with Keeper down the line. But Keeper's action economy is so over the top; it just completely slaughters Russia. It's a little bit trickier to play than Lure. Like Lure just kind of cheats, while Keeper just demolishes. Um, but yes, so the special rule here allows Lure to basically not only make it easier to manage the ravages on your board, but Lure can also throw presence on other boards to kind of help out those other players. As I mentioned earlier in this video, I really like Russia. It just every spirit approaches it differently. Like Fangs is going to be more aggressive, while these are all more defensive spirits. Stone just kind of ignores that Russia 6 rule altogether. Downpour is going to utilize the mass isolate to kind of ignore the Russia 2 rule. So River is going to try to set up a Russia 6 land on the turn that you're massive flooding into that Russia 6 land. It's just very interesting on how they approach this matchup, and I really enjoy it. The last thing I want to cover is, or are the different boards here. And so over here in the center, I have the 6 main boards, and then on the right, I have the 2 horizon boards. So starting off with the absolute worst board you can ask into Russia is board F. And it's worse for most spirits. Once again, like the ranking I'm giving here, it's really it comes down to your spirit onto the board. Some spirits can make board F work, but in general, it's going to be unfavorable. And the main reason is this is the only board in the game where both of your beasts start in the same land, which means if you don't have ways to move beasts around, you're going to be forced to take your escalations into this land, and that's going to be problematic because usually you want to be able to spread out the escalations so you can kind of escalate into 2 different lands, usually. Now, if you have both your beasts in the same land, well, good luck with that. You won't be able to do that because they'll have to go to that land. And that's why board F is generally considered one of the worst Russia boards. I have yellow check marks. Those are going to indicate the boards that I really like into this matchup. So we have board B, board E, and board A. And the main reason is you'll notice you'll have 2 Dahan in your red beast. So the red beast is representing the beast that Russia adds to the board. Well, the I don't know what color this is. I'm gonna call it brown. The brown beast is the one that's already started, or it's always starts on that land type. So the yellow check marks, I like this because the Dahan are placed in that beast land, and that's really important because it allows defensive spirits to defend this land, and they'll automatically get the Dahan damage back, allowing it to automatically clear that land for you. So you don't have to worry about cleaning it up. If I'm playing like board C, for instance, well, now board C8, let's say, looks like this. I then defend it. Okay, fine. I prevented the beast from dying, but now there's no Dahan to counterattack, so the land is just going to get worse once we enter those stage 2s and those stage 3s. So once again, I like board B, board A, and board E. Board E is pretty much always the best board, no matter what. We've already talked about that in plenty of the other videos, but remember, easy pocket formation here, a very easy isolated E4. Both beasts are next to each other, which is great. You also have the Dahan that are set up right on that beast land. It's just a very powerful board in general. I have like this black star here on board A and on board D, and that's because the beast is one of your beasts is placed onto the coast, and that could be problematic because when stage 2 comes up, you'll have the coast in addition to escalations, and that can kind of cause extra beasts that, or not extra beasts, extra explorers to be added to this beast land here. and that could cause it to be harder to manage than some of the other boards. Lastly, we have board G and board H. I guess board H is another, and board G. So both of these actually have Dahan that start in that extra beast land. But I don't like board G because it has another, I guess, edge case. But like I said, board F has both beasts in wetland in a single land. Board G has both beasts in jungle, but it's different jungles. So I mean, it's not like you're going to lose the game because you picked board G. It's just it's a little bit of an edge case that could cause problems down the line. Overall, my favorite board is board E. Least favorite board is board F. Now, if I'm playing mini mines, I've been playing a lot of mini mines into Russia lately. Mini mines picks any board, doesn't matter, just because you have so much beast movement. But if I'm picking like stone, for instance, I would hate to pick board F because I'm not going to be able to move my beasts, and this is going to become a very problematic land for me. I hope this video is going to help somebody that's looking for a general overview of Russia 6. Stay tuned for more Russia 1 to 6 videos. I'll be doing each individual level of Russia with playthrough guide. I'll see you guys in the next video.